Hey folks, I'm Saeed, the Codogrammer, and in this video we're going to take a look at whether software development, the way you and I know it, has completely changed. I mean changed forever. Let me explain. For a while now, I've been using a tool called GitHub CoPilot. I was on the wait list, my name came up, and I've been trialing it ever since. I've been using it in my day-to-day work, but also in a testing capacity for this video. And GitHub Copilot is the kind of tool that you might have predicted 10 or 20 years ago if you were a software engineer or an academic. But the reality of using it is far more shocking and far more surprising. And in this video, we're going to go through all of those kind of things. So what is GitHub Copilot? Does it spell the end of your career as a software developer? I'm going to give my verdict on GitHub Copilot after having used it for a while. We'll also take a look at some alternatives and any of the issues with it. So what qualifies me to talk about GitHub Copilot? Well, I've been a software developer for over 20 years. And in that time span, I've used all kinds of different systems and programming languages. I've worked with low code systems. I've worked with code generators, all of that kind of stuff. So it's just an opinion, but it's not a completely uninformed opinion. GitHub Copilot is a code completion and code suggestion tool. But unlike the code completion and postfix fixes, templates, all that kind of stuff that you're used to seeing in your typical IDEs like IntelliJ, VS Code that have been doing these kinds of things for a very long time, that will suggest a variable name, a keyword, or some templated piece of code, or some improvement, some refactoring to your code. GitHub Copilot can often generate usually functional chunks of code that can solve some problem that is inferred from what you're doing in your IDE. Now, that might still sound similar to code completion, but it's so much more than that. It can suggest based on a method name, it can suggest based on a piece of code or even a comment. And it can even suggest completions to your comments, which is really bizarre and really strange or creepy, but also amazing at the same time. In fact, a few times it felt like somebody had read my mind when it was completing the comments that I was writing. But the thing that makes it really stand out for me is that it looks like it understands semantics. So for example, in your IDE, you might declare a type called animal. If you start typing ANIM, something like that, it will eventually suggest the animal type that you've declared. But it won't understand that a giraffe is an animal and a car is not an animal, okay? Unless you've actually declared those types to have a relationship in your code. But Copilot at least gives the impression that it does understand. It obviously doesn't, but it gives the impression that it understands the relationship between those things, which you haven't even declared yet. We'll look at an example shortly. Now, GitHub Copilot generates mostly novel code, which means that it's been able to learn enough from existing code that it can produce new code. It does this using a codex by OpenAI, which is based on GPT-3. Now, that's not really essential to know, so don't worry if you don't understand what that means. The AI was trained on large amounts of code held in public repositories on GitHub, which is a tad controversial, but we'll talk more about that later. We're going to, in our examples, look mostly at Java code, but actually you can use it for JavaScript, Python, and other languages as well. And I've even had success using it for things which are not even listed on the Copilot website. You can use it with different IDEs, including JetBrains IDEs. You can use it with VS Code, obviously, because VS Code is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft owns GitHub, and GitHub owns Copilot. But anyway, that's enough talking. Let's see it in action. All right, so here we are in the IDE, and I have Copilot plugin enabled. So let's start messing around and see what it can do. So we'll start with a simple example. Let's try and create a class. Now, immediately you get the suggestion to have a main method. So let me just do that again. Okay, I just click tab and we've got our main method there. All right, let's also create a nested type, just so we've got some kind of domain object. All right, so that gives us a suggestion of address. Let's just accept that. Let's go on to the next line. And let's not accept that. Okay, so let's keep it fairly simple. All right, it'll go back to our main method. And at this point, if we want to just get some suggestions based on what we already have, we can say option / and you get like some bizarre suggestion like that, which isn't very helpful. Let's just get rid of that. So let's put a comment in. So if you say filter a list of, let's make that. All right, so now let's see if it can suggest anything. Okay. These are just suggestions for the comments, by the way. So let's get rid of some of these and let's take this out of here. So now if we say public, okay, so from the comment, it's inferred that we want to filter employees. So filter a list of employee objects and return a list of employee objects. It's got age is greater than 30. I'm not entirely sure where it got that from, but let's go with that. And let's import some of these items. Okay, and we don't have any getters or setters, so let's just say at data. Let's use Lombok for that. All right, and then let's import collectors. So you can see that it basically from this comment generated this entire method, and it wasn't really far off what we wanted. I don't know if it had already taken the age into account from a previous section or just filtered that because we didn't actually specify any filtering criteria, but hopefully you can see that that was pretty amazing. So let's this time round create a method without a comment. So if we say public, we won't make it static, and we say public list employee. Okay, so I didn't want all of this. Let me get rid of this for a second and say filter employees by the first letter of their name. So pretty specific. And there you have it. So it's not perfect because it doesn't allow you to specify a prefix letter. So if we say string letter, see, it already knew that I wanted letter. In fact, let me minimize this sidebar. Okay, so it guessed the parameter that I wanted to pass in was letter, and it guessed that correctly. So if I change that now, all right, so now this is a fully functioning method which does exactly what we wanted, and it's quite specific, as you can see from the name of the method. And so, yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing where it saves you a lot of time. Anyway, let's try and create some more examples. So let's say, let me copy this part. Okay, and we say filter employees. In fact, let's say duplicate employees by name. Okay, so not really a perfect implementation because we haven't implemented the equals and hash codes methods of employee. So doing a distinct probably won't work in this instance because the uniqueness needs to be based on the name, but not an altogether like terrible suggestion. So, okay, there's an example of where it didn't really generate what we wanted perfectly. Let's comment that out. All right, so let's try list employee. Let's say get employees intersection. All right. And yeah, I think that would actually work. So that's pretty good. Let's see if we can say something that's a bit more meaningful, but doesn't actually specify any of the field values. So if we say, let's copy this part. All right, so now if we say find oldest, now oldest doesn't mention age. And in fact, I didn't mean to write find oldest employee. It just completed it for me. And if we select that now, and we just need to import the comparator. Now, if you look here, oh, okay, yeah, it's actually correct. My return type is wrong. So it should really be, I should really just be employee, or maybe optional employee, given that this could actually be empty. But so I didn't mention age, I mentioned oldest, and it understands that oldest, or at least it looks like it understands that old and young relate to age, and therefore it's done the right comparison and it's found the maximum age, it's found the oldest employee. So again, a really good suggestion. All right, so let's see if we can get multiple suggestions. So if we say employee, find, all right, so now it's suggesting find youngest employee. So you can see that the previous method, we said find oldest employee. So it must be looking at some degree of context. Let's see if we can get more suggestions. So we can select Control Option square bracket. Okay, no more CoPilot suggestions available. So let's say find any employee. Okay, and we do that. And here, if I say dot, okay, you can see that that's coming up with CoPilot suggestions as well as IntelliJ suggestions. All right, so let's try another example. So if we say find youngest employee, okay, you can see it's come up with a suggestion there, which looks good. But then if we say from to lists, now it seems to be getting only the employees that exist in both and getting the minimum, which probably isn't what I want in this case, but you can still see that the suggestions are quite powerful. Now, as it's making these suggestions, so if I let it do that again, I can cycle by selecting certain options. I can cycle through other options, but I think in this case, we don't actually have any other suggestions available. So let's just open CoPilot here and say refresh. And you can see that it's got multiple solutions here. And if you prefer one of the other ones over the one that is suggested, you can select that. And it's probably learning from that using telemetry data at the same time. So yeah, one of these might be more suitable to our particular application. All right, so let's just minimize that again. Now let's imagine that we're writing some comments. So if I say, oops. If I say Java has multiple types. Okay, it's made that suggestion. Yeah. And we say Java has many topics, including, let's see. Okay, so I'm not sure why annotations is coming up multiple times. Let's see if it comes up with any more. All right, it's just going to keep suggesting annotations. So here's an example of where it's gone a bit wrong. So let's just get rid of that and do that again. Let's just keep accepting that to see if it changes its mind. Okay, it stopped suggesting annotations. All right, so these are the topics that it can come up with for Java. And let's say Java advanced topics include. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, here it's doing that thing where it's selecting. So this is, I don't know, a bug or some sort of optimization that's needed, but there's an example of some of its limitations. But like, if you just look at these suggestions, right, I can't think of another code completion tool that even gets close to something like this. So first of all, this is a comment. Secondly, it seems to actually very deeply understand what I'm talking about, as if it was a human coming up with this list, but it's a lot quicker and a lot more accurate. So if I said that Java has multiple types, primitive types, reference types, and void, we're not worried about whether this is a complete list at this point, just whether it's a good list. Then we say Java has many topics, including collection, streams, lambda, generics. Now, obviously, that's not the complete list of topics that Java includes, but it's not a bad start. And also annotations kept getting repeated, so there's another limitation. Then when I typed Java advanced topics include, it did actually give me more advanced Java topics, reflection, serialization, concurrency. These things are more complicated and they're not basic topics, which if somebody's new to Java, you might start them off on. This is an example of where this is almost like a writing tool. Even if you are writing plain English in comments, this can actually help you with that. So let's look at some more examples. Let's create a class. So let's say static class animal. In fact, let's say static interface, and we don't need to say static. So let's get rid of that animal. So select that. And then we say, so straight away saying class dog implements animal. It understands, or looks like it understands, that a dog is an animal. This is what I was talking about how it appears to understand semantics. So let's go again. Okay, and immediately it says cat. It's not suggesting a house or a car or anything like that. It knows that a dog is an animal. It knows that a cat is an animal based on the examples that it studied on the internet. Let's see if we want to add some more methods into our interface. All right, so far no suggestion. So let's say void eat. Okay, not a bad suggestion. Let's say void sleep. Now let's say list of strings. Not a bad suggestion. Let's say list of integers. Get numbers. Okay, get numbers. Maybe that a better suggestion might have been say get limbs or get legs, something like that. Let's actually, maybe it doesn't know about this type. Oh, sorry, that should be integer. All right, so let's see. Yeah. Okay, so that's not a great suggestion. So let's see if we can get a different suggestion. Yeah, so I'm selecting alternatives by pressing Control, Option, and square bracket. You might need to set that depending on what other shortcuts you've got on your machine. So get ages. It's a bit strange. You wouldn't have a list of ages, but still, it's not a bad suggestion. So let's see if we can get some more. Get numbers, get ages. Yeah, okay, it's only got 2 suggestions there. Let's see if we can open CoPilot and get any better suggestions. Yeah, it doesn't have any better solutions than that. All right, so not bad. All right, so let's comment these ones. Let's delete these for now. All right, so let's try another example. So if we say public void make a HTTP request to a public API, Now, notice I'm writing methods in a much more descriptive way because I'm almost trying to explain to GitHub CoPilot what I'm trying to do. Now, if you look at this suggestion, it's not a bad suggestion, but just something to keep in mind. I did something like this earlier and it didn't suggest any of this code until I created the HTTP client. I only needed to reference that portion of it. That's the reference type. And then it made these suggestions. So now it's obviously remembered that. It's got my data and it remembered that I did something similar last time. So it's made this suggestion. But again, not really a bad suggestion at all. It probably needs, a bit of tweaking. I need to get the right connection type. I need to make sure it's the right type of call. But you instantly get your basic building blocks of your code and then you can tweak it from there. Now that's a hell of a lot quicker than breaking out of your workflow, going on to Stack Overflow, looking through some suggestions, copying them, pasting them, and then trying them. This is like right there in your IDE. So as I say, I'm absolutely blown away by it. Let me know in the comments below what you think, or if there's anything else that you want me to try and demo to see what kind of suggestions it comes up with. All right, so let's have a quick chat about who's behind Copilot. Now, Copilot is labeled as part of GitHub, the world's mammoth code repository of repositories. And GitHub is owned by Microsoft. Now, Copilot's AI was trained on the public code available in public repositories on GitHub, and large amounts of it too. It uses GPT-3, and GPT-3 is produced by OpenAI. Now, OpenAI was founded by Elon Musk, who I'm sure you know, and Sam Altman, who used to run Y Combinator, the startup incubator. Now, Microsoft doesn't own OpenAI, but they did receive a $1 billion investment from OpenAI, and GPT-3 is exclusively licensed to Microsoft. All right, so what's my verdict on GitHub Copilot? Well, in short, I think it's absolutely incredible. It's one of the most amazing pieces of technology that I've used in all of my career. I actually realized how amazing it was not when I was trying to come up with examples and demos of what this thing can do when I was actually experimenting with it. It's really when I had forgot that I had it installed and actually went to my IDE to do some actual work. And I think I was editing some Jenkins scripts and it just came up with all kinds of really useful suggestions that were like mind-blowing, and most of the time were almost exactly what I wanted or exactly what I wanted. I then later on was doing some Java work, and again I forgot that I had it installed. It kicked in and just was producing all kinds of amazing suggestions, saving me a ton of time. So I think in terms of how it affects developers, I think in the short term, I think it's a good thing for developers. I think it's a good thing for organizations. But as the adoption rolls out across organizations, once they commercialize it, once they make it fully available, I should imagine that most organizations will have access to GitHub Copilot because it's so powerful. So no one company will necessarily have a big advantage. And I think it will just make developers more productive. They'll enjoy their work more. They'll get more done more quickly. I also don't think it's going to result in mass layoffs or anything like that, because organizations will just be expected to produce more and produce it quicker as they compete with other organizations. I don't think they're going to suddenly decide that they need fewer developers. I think longer term, and how long is long term, but longer term still, I do think that it does present somewhat of a risk. I think as these technologies in any sphere, in any sector, some combination of AI, robotics, and software, what it can do will be better than what humans can do in almost every aspect, in almost every sector. So longer term, I do think it will have a negative impact, but how long is long term? I don't really know. But for now, I think this is absolutely incredible, and definitely I think you should check it out. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Let me know what you think of GitHub Copilot in the comments below. Do you think it's a threat? Do you think it's an opportunity? Do you think it's something that's really good? When leaving your comment, if you don't mind, let me know how many years of experience you have as a developer as well, because I think that might be interesting to see how that informs different people's decisions. Also, if you want to be kept up to date with more developer news, industry news, tech, software development related information, make sure you hit subscribe so that I can keep you abreast of those kind of things. And thank you for watching.